Hi, I'm RC Jim, and welcome to our second video on the assembling of this Seagull Corsair. Yeah, it's coming along really well. Now in this particular video, we're continuing on with a battery compartment and some other things, and boy, we've had some issues that we've had to go through. It seemed like everything that was supposed to be really simple wasn't simple. I imagine you've been there, done that, you know, but well, have a watch and see what it is that we had as far as challenges and what we had to do to get through them. I'm putting both servos up here. They recommend that one would be sideways back here and one would be front and back up there, and I guess it'd be the elevator that they've got up there because the elevator rod is too long. So what I've done is I've taken apart the end of it. So you see on the end I got the slot and a hole in there, and this was in there. I was able to just simply pull that out. It looks like it had glue on it of some sort or another. Maybe they just did that before they put this on, just zapped it with some CA to harden it and give it some strength. I don't know. But anyway, that was like that, and then this was over top of that, and it had a pin in the side of it here to hold that in place. Okay, so this sleeve held the thing into the hole and so forth. So I need to know how short to make it. So what I'm doing, I've got the end on there, and I'm just holding it alongside of the plane to get it up to the join where the elevator joins onto the horizontal stabilizer. And I want to end up about this long, okay? So that can be in the middle of this out here. So let's just go ahead and measure what we need to do. Okay, so that's right on the join there right now. This is where we want it to be. So about 80 millimeters would put it into here, which gives us adjustment both ways. Yeah, I believe we'll have plenty of clearance as far as that is concerned, so that shouldn't be an issue. So I'm going to shorten it up 80 millimeters, and then we will you know, do the slot and the hole and everything just like what they have done. And we'll use this thing even though it seems a little bit dodgy to me. But anyway, we're building a kit that's supposed to have all the stuff that you need, so we'll do our best to use what they got. Okay, so we've shortened the rod. We've drilled a hole in there that fits this guy. Okay, snugly, but so that will go in there. I'm now working on getting the slot in here, and so I've got it part way in there, nearly there. And in doing that, I'm using this guy. Working it back and forth to get the width, and periodically checking to see if we've arrived. I'd say that'll do it for that. Now this probably won't go all in there. It's got a very rounded bend on it. So rather than make a great big hole, we will see if we can put a radius on the entry to the hole. Just try to file a little bit of radius where it goes in, and then retain a nice tight fit for the rod in there. I reckon that's going to work. So we'll give it a little bit of a gentle persuasion, hopefully not wreck this. Yep. Beautiful. Now I'm going to follow their example and zap that. I think it's actually plenty strong, but I'm going to go ahead and zap it anyway, just to make sure that wood stays nice and strong. I'm just thinking that I want this wire to be in the center of the rod. Just give it a little bit of a bend. It's pushing straight on there. Okay. A while back I bought these little 1mm screws, M1s, and got them online, and when they arrived I thought, boy, those are small. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to use those. But perfect for this. So I've taken my little tiny drill and I've drilled a hole in there. I've held the screw with the forceps. I used the jeweler's screwdriver to put it in there, and now that's attached a bit better than the little pin that they'd used before. So, happy with that. Well, we're now getting this little Y forky thing in there for the control of the elevators. And the issue is that for the tail wheel and the rudder, there's a control arm that's right down about here that comes over on this side. And so it's really close to where this is, but that's just a little bit below it, the way the plane is sitting right now. So I've had to rerun this a couple of times to get it in the right place, but I now have the string coming underneath that control arm and coming over here. And so what we're going to need to do is to, we got the rudder push rod here that works that. I'm going to tape that up high so that I can get this down below it, and then we're going to hook the other string to this one now that I've got it routed in the right place, and hopefully we're going to be able to pull that sucker through there. I'm also concerned that my slots are rather skinny back there, and I don't want to use so much tape that the thing can't get through the slot. That's another peripheral sort of issue. Trying to get it on there nice and tight. Well, hopefully that'll get through there. Flatten it top and bottom. Okay, so this is going on that side, and I want to tape that thing up above them to keep it out of the way. So I've been using a torch, flashlight, and a mirror to examine where things are going and how they're positioned and all of that. Go ahead and get it started in there. You can see which way they're going. Yeah, I think that's going to work. Okay, so having positioned that, we then pull on the two strings together. We guide the thing in there. There is a bulkhead back there that is a little bit narrower than the way I've got the things bent. That's probably what I'm up against right now. Yep. Tell you what, let's put them closer together. Try that. Part of the issue is that this thing is angled down by requirement of its length, and it likes to hit on the bottom. Okay. Yeah, we've got them right here. There's one. Yeah, this one's just a little bit fat for getting through the hole. Oops. Yep. Okay, now they're both coming through. Okay, we have done it. Okay, we've managed to poke both of them through there. And so we'll get that cleaned off. And I think that's going to do the job. Well, we're getting the servos hooked up for the elevator and rudder. And the servos that I'm using are ones that I bought for the C-47 landing gear. They were advertised as being a 180-degree servo, and of course with a 180-degree servo, you'd like the thing to turn 180 degrees, the landing gear, lock it in one place and lock it in the other place, if you're using the old style servos. And again, that's an old plane that I was working on. But anyway, turns out they're not 180 degree servos, but I had them on hand, so I thought, well, I'll use them on this one. They'll work. So I first off picked this little red guy here and thought, yeah, that'll work out good. And it had 4 arms on it, so I cut off 3 of the arms and got that all set to go. And then discovered that the hole for going onto the servo is too small. Doesn't fit. You know, I've wrestled around with it. And so anyway, then I tried one of these guys, and these guys I hadn't been using because of the giant holes that it has inside them. But anyway, one of those does fit. Got a larger diameter hole, and these things all came with a thing. So anyway, I thought, okay, the red one is just, you know, it got mixed up, shouldn't have been in there, and so I'll use a different one. So I grabbed one of these round ones, and I cut it to get just what I wanted, and added a hole to be where I wanted the hole to be, and went to put that on, and that's also the small size thing on it, you know, and not like this one. And I hadn't used these because they have such gigantic holes in it. So anyway, I ended up taking one of those where the little indent is in the middle there. I drilled a new hole there, countersunk it from the back so that you could get a nut onto it. Doesn't have room for 2 nuts. And by the way, these little connector things, they came with a kit, and that's one of them there. And it consists of the body of the connector with a grub nut in one end, but inside it's got a little bolt that then fastens to the 2 nuts. So you get an assembly like that right there. So anyway, it'd be nice to have both nuts on it, but I didn't have room for both. So I added a washer in here, and then when I was putting this on, I put thread locker onto the threads, screwed the bolt into the nut, tightened it up, then backed it off a tiny bit, then added thread locker to the outside threads that were showing there, and that's going to do a good job. But boy, what a bunch of work just to hook up a servo. Well, after an immense amount of mucking around, we finally got these servos together. Little arms are working out fine with the holes in the middle. Pretty well gives us full travel and everything. And yeah, it's looking good. So naturally, when you're doing these, you use a servo tester like this to make sure it's in the middle when you first get started. And on this one, on the rudder, it tends to have more travel going to the left than what it does going to the right. So I've purposely put the arm a little bit offset to give the right, when it's pulling back, to give that a bit more action. Where's the middle? Right in there someplace. Okay, so that's smaller amount, that's larger amount. And then with the elevator, we got up, we got down. Good bit of it. I mean, this is going to zing around quite well. And, yeah, going to have to do a little bit more adjusting. It's a pain with this type of thing with that Y. I'd much rather have 2 rods come up with one connector up here connecting to the servo. Much easier to make the adjustments than having to turn those little clevises on each end. So I'm like maybe off a half turn or something, but anyway, pretty close, and we'll make some more adjustments when we get ready to prep it for flying. So we've got good rudder movement both ways, nice and sharp. And for our elevator, all very good. Full travel without any humming or problems. Well, it's now time to put our little plastic fairing onto the back. So I've cut off the flanges around the outside, cut off this bit here. Having done that, because my thinking was I certainly want it to be overlapped there and screwed on, but that makes it short back here. So had I left that on, it would have made it even with this. So apparently what they wanted you to do is to leave the piece here, but it'd have to get relieved to clear this. So I guess you would cut a cut 2 lines down this way and up in there to relieve that, you know. So at any rate, it's underneath. It's not a big deal. So I've cut it like so that I can overlap it back here. If I wanted to, I could make it even and just leave a little bit of a gap there, but I think I'd rather have it be a little bit more secure. And it's not a big deal that we got a notch here in the back. So I'm planning on screwing it on, but I note that when you go to screw it, it's going to have bumps along. Either that or you use a dozen screws. It's got to get bent over, and it doesn't really want to do that. I don't think it would glue on terribly well. And if it did glue onto the outside part of the covering, that would just peel off anyway. You could remove covering and glue it to the balsa, but I'm just going to use screws. Might need to get in here and take loose some of this at some time or another. So I think screws are the way to go. So I'll put a few of them in there. I'll paint it first. Ideally, just ordinary spray paint on that. You know, a can of spray paint would do a great job, but I don't have dark blue, so I'm going to try my acrylics, and if they don't stick, then I'll revert back to the spray paint. But I'll start out putting some paint on some scraps. I'll sand it lightly to give a bit of a surface that the paint might like to stick on, and we'll see how that goes. Well, we've painted our tail thing. Not exactly the right color. It's really hard to match colors. You can go to a hardware store or paint shop and get them to match it. But for our purposes, that's going to be fine down there. Nobody's going to notice that much. But for right now, we're going to do weight and balance. I'm just going to set it back there. We'll have a few screws in it, but we'll be adding some things up here too. Our balance point is 90 mils back from the front of the wing. And when we balance at the field, we'll be balancing it upside down because that's the most stable. So I put these little master air screw decals or stickers on there. And so got one on each side, so that's when we balance it from the top. But underneath, I've also got a little piece of masking tape that I can feel with my finger. And the reason why I've got it underneath is when we're trying to work out battery placement, we need to have things set on the plane up here, and you can't very well do that with the thing upside down. So balance is balance, and the main thing is get the plane level and see which way it is. And of course, we'll want to have it adjustable to where we can do finer tuning later. I've noted that I need as much weight forward as possible, basically. So I'm planning on mounting the ESC on the motor side of the firewall up here. So I've just got the ESC up there. I've got the battery located to where it's about 75-80 mils from the firewall, and the battery is 150 long. So that's roughly the battery being horizontal and as far forward as it can go. Now we can get a little bit more forward placement of the battery by angling it and bringing it a tiny bit closer, but that's going to be a bit difficult. So right now I've got everything set to where pretty well it's as forward as it can go. There will be a tray that we're going to put in there that's going to add a little bit more weight. We got the cover for that adds a tiny bit of weight. But all in all, we can always add some weight onto the nose if we need to. Or we could even move the motor far forward. And as I've thought, right now I've got the motor just attached on 4 bolts, but I could use a wood block to mount the motor on, and that'll add a tiny bit of weight as well. So I'm feeling underneath for the balance points. I'm then picking it up, and I'm using my thumbs to hold on it to get the plane level. And then I see it's just oh boy, it's really close. I was going to say a tiny bit forward. Depends, it's not stable when you balance it this way, which is why you do it for a low wing wane, you balance it the other way. Get it off of the stand. Yeah, that's just a tiny bit nose heavy, so that is good. So that tells me that the battery doesn't absolutely need to be jammed all the way up. By the time I build my tray in there, I can have it sitting horizontally on the tray, and it should be pretty close to being balanced right. So if I want to, I can leave these things as they are. And as I mentioned with the ESC, what I'm going to do, let's get this off before we drop it and damage it. It's just going to get attached onto the firewall up here. Yeah, probably a little bit off to one side. And with the battery leads to where they go in, probably up near the top. Be nice if they gave us longer leads on ESCs. I'm not going to use this little plug thingy. I could have it, you know, mounted down there someplace. Down there in the cowl, so in that general area. This could come through. I might need to extend this a tiny bit to just have enough grip on it to be able to plug into it. So we'll have to remove that anyway to get the wires, the leads in there. The battery will go in with the plug on this end of it, so that should be fine. I've got this wired up. This has obviously been in a plane before, you know, as has the motor. That is the voltage sampling for the receiver for telemetry, and that'll have to get extended to get down to wherever the receiver ends up being, up here someplace. But all of that looks pretty good. Now, in order to get the battery in, let's get this out of the way for a moment. In order to get the battery in, I've got to go behind that firewall there and then scoot it in a little bit, and then I can get it down. So, I think what I'm going to do is have the battery tray go down on an angle. I might need to jury rig something and just, you know, just have a flat plate in there to make sure I can get it. It's either that or the tray is only sitting on the front part. But that means that when the battery's in there, this whole part is hanging out in the air on the end. I'm not sure how well I'm going to be able to strap it in either. Now, if the thing was on an angle, then basically the lid holds it down. Have a little bit of foam on the lid to where the battery can't come up, and it's sit down plugged into a thing down in the bottom. So that might be a plan as well. In fact, I think that's going to be my preferred one. But before I actually build the complete box, I'm going to rig up just a flat piece of plywood in there and see if I can get it in the position that I think it ought to be, and then see if I can get the battery in there okay. Okay, well, what's this? Yeah, this is my attempt at sort of working this thing out. So you see the little panel down in there. It's got two little bolts on it and two little M2s sticking out there. That's to act as a stop for the battery. That panel is just a little bit longer than the battery, and the strings up here are being used to hold that thing up in place up in the top. Okay. Now with that little panel in place in there, I'm now checking out the battery. Can slide it in. I'm just barely clearing the top. There isn't anything extra there at all, and just barely getting it in. But it fits with a 1/2 inch or so clearance, enough room for some cables and things like that. I was thinking about maybe trying it a little bit higher, but actually we do need a little bit of clearance there for all that kind of stuff. So that's going to put the center of it pretty well close to where we had it, and we can make other adjustments if needed along the way. Now, I noticed when I put that in there that it's not sitting all the way down on this bottom of this bulkhead here. So I've put a couple marks on it where it comes to, and I can also double check when it goes in to make sure that it's going to clear the wing. And obviously we can't miss it by an awful lot. Looks like it's down below the line that I've drawn in there. That thing ought to work. I do have one little bolt sticking out. This bolt here is sticking out a little bit on the front, but it's missing this, and I could put a little block on there to protect the battery from hitting that. Well, do you like engineering? We get to do a little bit here. Okay, so we're going to put the servo tray in there. It's coming up high on this end, and it's going down low, down on that end, just above the wing. And essentially it's going to look something like this. So going to have it on a bit of an angle, so that right there is the side that you're looking at there. First I was going to have it boxed in at the end, but then I discovered that the servo tray comes just 50 mils above the bottom of it there. And so I'm actually just going to put a little beam, balsa beam across the top of that. That will hold the battery down. I'll still have the sides on there. Now, in terms of working out the angles, I needed to know what the angle of the tray was in there. So what I did is I took this barbecue skewer and I marked here the length of the tray, and I stuck it in from the bottom, and I ran it up to where I wanted it to go up at the top there. And then I put the little mark down where it was just above the wing, down there in the bottom. And then I measured down to that skewer here and here and measured that distance there. And so you got a nice little engineering problem here. Okay, so we got 70 mils across here, measured down 50, measured down 75 there. If you look at this little triangle at the bottom, if you take off 25 off of the 75, that would make it even with a 50 to where those are both right angles. And so this angle alpha here is what we'd like to work out. So the tangent of alpha is opposite over adjacent. So the arctangent, or tangent minus 1, of the 25 divided by the 70 is going to equal alpha. And you get your little calculator app out and do tangent minus 1 of 25 divided by 70, and you get 19.65 degrees. Now, these measurements might not be exactly, perpendicular and all that kind of thing, but that's going to be pretty close. And so I just said, well, 19.65, let's call it 20. And so I measured the 20 degrees measured the 20 degrees to cut that one. And then I put it in there, and with it in there, I marked where the bulkhead came to at the top, and then I drew the 20-degree angle down this way, and that will be where our attaching piece is going to go to hold the thing in place there in the middle. Up at the end, up at this end, it's going to have a little supporting piece underneath it that will screw through the firewall to. And the only issue here is that this firewall is not exactly perpendicular to the plane. So there'll be a little bit of fudging when we go to put the beam across there to get everything right. But even if it was off a little bit, we get screws into it. Yeah, it's going to hold it there. So we cut off the side, put the side in there to make sure that it was all going to fit, and verified that the lines look like it's in the right place and ends up in the right place and all of that. So now I'll go ahead and make the rest of the box, and we'll see if we can get it all in there. Oh, and when we go to put this supporting piece on there, it needs to be able to fit in the hole there. So that's 70 mils, and the box is 50 mils wide, so it'll have a little bit of overlap on this panel there. And we'll probably put screws in from the inside. I think I can get at it to do that. I could glue it, but I'd like to be able to take it out should I have to. Well, believe it or not, engineers can get it wrong sometimes. I thought that this was going to be perfect, but I've got the thing on a little bolt up front and get the back of it such that I put this piece of wood across where the wing would be, to where if it was sitting down as low as it could possibly go, holding it up that way with my hand, and then putting the battery in here. That's as far as it goes. I've got two options. One, I can open up the lid for the battery box, cut this out, attach this to the other piece that's coming out, and that would be fine. Or the other one is that where this, I think that's going to be it. I was thinking if I cut the floor out of it behind the bulkhead, actually it could be before the bulkhead. Yeah, so I'd have to cut the floor out of it. Then I could have it setting on the front of the tray for the front of the battery, and then the back of the battery is going to be sitting right on the wing, and that wing is not made for that. So I think we're going to cut this out. Just a quick tip for you here. I'm cutting this out, and just for these I just put a straight edge along it and cut. But for this one here, my straight edge doesn't really want to bend, and it'd be kind of hard to hold it there. So I've taken this plastic scale, used some tape to tape it together at the bottom. It just happens to be just the right size, but that gives me something that I can cut against. Of course, very carefully with the first few passes, but that allows me to very carefully keep my hand steady and get that thing cut. Well, we're now ready to do the next little bit. You can see I've relieved this down here. That's for the leads that come out of the side of the battery. When the battery goes in there, I want these leads to be not getting wrenched against anything. And that's going to hold that in there nice. So we now want to get the thing supported in here. Earlier, before I realized I had the problem getting the battery in, I actually epoxied on a little block onto there, and then discovered that I couldn't get the battery in. And so I reckoned that I had to lower the box back here. I didn't have it quite all the way to where the wing was. And so I took that back out, but then discovered that even with it out, I still couldn't get the battery in there. So I've got a little bolt on the front that goes through a hole that secures the front, or well, it will hold it in place. I'll add a couple more screws in securing it. The wing basically is straight, but I want to allow just a little bit of a gap there just to make sure that it's not going to do any damage to the wing. So I'm going to put this like that and hold that there. So I've got my little block that is going in there. And instead of epoxying it this time, I'm going to screw it into the firewall, or the bulkhead. Okay, I've got this 20-degree angle cut on here. Okay, the screw's going from this side because it's going to go on like that. And I'm leaving just a little bit of a point going out there to help me locate it when I put it on there, because I can't really hold everything and screw them in all at the same time. Now, if you had somebody helping you with this, you might be able to do it all at once. But for those of us that are working on our own, what I'm doing is just have the screw extending just enough to where it can poke into the wood and stay put. Now, Get this in place, we get that in place. We're holding that up against that. Verifying that it's secured on the front and it's all the way up there. This is down here, just that little bit of a gap there. This is going to go in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press in on it, which should have those screws poking at it, and I can get this out of the way. Yeah, I might need to drill a hole, huh? Well, we've now got our Dremel ready to go. So I'll see if I can get this thing positioned again, and then I'll drill the two middle ones. We'll get this screw started. We've got the hole drilled. Yeah, I believe that's the hole. Get this one out of the way. Okay, so major accomplishment, getting the first one in there. Get this back in again. You can see the hole on the end of it. I'm threading that into one of the support bolts for the motor. And it protects the battery from the bolt and gives a nice locating feature for the middle of the thing up there. Okay, that looks pretty good. And getting that straight. Okay, so have a look at it. Yeah, with it up all the way, I've got a gap under there. Looks pretty even. It's level that way. Okay, now before I put more screws in, let's just check the battery out. This is an old battery that I decided to use for checking this out just because it's swollen a bit in the back. I'm not using it anymore. Soon will be disposed of, but for the moment it gives me a slightly larger battery to test things with. Yep, beautiful. Okay, no problem at all. So now I'm going to run some screws into the front of it to hold that in place. Yeah, then we will glue the box onto this. And I'll probably not use epoxy, I'll use this stuff that can come off if worse comes to worse, but just something helps secure it there. Okay, so we've got the battery box in place. We've put glue under this block. I did that with the plane right side up, and then through the top I put a little bit of glue on the top of that. Used a flashlight or torch to see what I was doing while I was doing that. Then put the battery box in such that it didn't get down onto the block until it was all the way up. We've put 2 screws into the front of it. We've upped those to M3s, a size larger than these here. After this cures, we will add the next 2 screws there. We've got a wedge underneath here on the servo tray to hold it up against that. And we verify that we still have clearance to where the wing is going to go. Well, we now have our battery box in place, and boy, it is slick. It works really, really good. That's going to give us room to get leads in there and all of that. Again, the ESC is going to go on the firewall. Leads will come through there. Be able to click things together without any worries. So that's all good. As far as our lid goes, it's now in 2 pieces, so we're going to have to connect those together. So they'll go together like this, so we will put some bits underneath. I'm also going to put in these supports on here. We'll put them several places along here. Plus I was going to put one up there, but now that that's just very short, I don't need one up there. So we'll have several of them along here, and probably have some pieces between them going along this way to add that. So we'll do that in our next video. Oh boy, we really had to work through some issues this go round, didn't we? Yeah, a lot of things that we didn't anticipate in this particular video, but nonetheless we worked through them and got some good results along the way. Just a few things yet to come. Got the ESC to get in there, hooking up the electronics, the receiver, getting everything all connected. But hey, a maiden flight is not too far away. So make sure that you've subscribed so that you can easily find this next video when it happens. And then, of course, check out other videos on our site there. And eventually that one will be that final video. Well, I'm RC Jim signing off. You have a great day. Enjoy your flying and building and assembling and all that goes with it.